Have you ever worked with a client who is doing everything right and still feels like they are losing? This is the precise state of many high-performing coaching clients. They hit their milestones and grow professionally, checking every box on their development plan, yet they feel as though they are losing. They report a specific kind of exhaustion that has nothing to do with their actual workload. Instead, it comes from the constant, silent habit of measuring their own position against peers who appear to be further ahead. When they face standard professional friction, a slow quarter or a rejected proposal, they do not see it as a variable of business. They replay these setbacks as definitive evidence of their own failure. This dynamic is one of the most common sources of stagnation in professional coaching. It is rarely diagnosed correctly because it is entirely unrelated to a client's actual skill, effort, or capability. The pressure they feel is the result of an invisible scoreboard, a set of rules and metrics they never consciously agreed to play by. To address this, we can use Simon Sinek's concept of the infinite game. It provides a structural framework for identifying why these high achievers feel stuck. For the coach, this concept requires a strict ethical boundary. It is not a piece of advice to be taught to the client or a model they are expected to memorize. Instead, the coach holds this mindset internally. It acts as a diagnostic lens used to design questions that invite the client to examine the rules of the game they are currently playing. Applying this lens shifts how a client relates to their competition and their long-term growth, without the coach ever having to dictate what their goals should be. The objective is not to provide the client with new answers. It is to change the architectural structure of the questions the client is willing to ask themselves. The framework begins by defining two types of players. The finite player plays to win. They operate with fixed rules, known competitors, and clearly defined endpoints. This diagram shows the mindset mismatch. The finite mindset is bounded by time limits. Winning is the zero-sum objective, where losing ends the game. The infinite mindset is a continuous forward vector. The goal isn't final victory, but longevity, building capacity to stay in play. Most clients experience burnout because they are operating in infinite arenas, like leadership or long-term career growth, using a strict finite mindset. They treat a single setback early in their career as if it were a final score. They look at someone else's midpoint and feel they have already lost. Optimizing for a single Friday deadline within a decades-long career produces a structural mismatch. The effort required to win the short-term game eventually consumes the resources required to sustain the long-term one. The first application of this lens is helping clients identify the specific external benchmarks that are currently driving their behavior. Clients often enter a session with a heavy sense of being behind, even though they never formally chose the race they are running. This represents the psychological weight of unchosen metrics. A glowing scoreboard dictates success, hanging over a professional reacting to numbers they never personally selected. To dismantle this, the coach asks diagnostic questions. Where did this definition of success come from? And whose timeline are you measuring yourself against? We then pivot to a secondary question. If there were no one else left to compare yourself to, how would you define progress? These questions are not meant to encourage complacency. Their purpose is to distinguish between goals a client genuinely values and pressures they have unconsciously inherited. Realizing the scoreboard was never actually theirs creates a shift in perspective. It allows the client to refocus their energy on their own targets rather than reacting to inherited ones. The second application involves changing how clients process professional difficulty. A finite mindset treats a setback as a definitive loss. An infinite mindset processes the same event as neutral information. This decision tree shows two paths. Under a finite rule set, a setback routes to a dead end, a final verdict on ability. But under an infinite rule set, the same event routes into a loop of curiosity, providing the data needed to continue the process. This applies to common coaching hurdles: a missed promotion, a failed product launch, or a professional relationship that has collapsed. The coach's objective is not to fix these events. Instead, we ask what the event reveals about what the client is building and where they want to go next. This reframe preserves the client's agency. It moves them out of a posture of self-judgment and into a posture of active curiosity. How a client responds to a setback often surfaces their core values. This provides the coach with the raw material needed to help them recommit to their true direction. Insight alone is insufficient. To produce change, the coach must help the client design forward movement that is structurally sound. Finite action steps are fragile. They are built around external variables that the client cannot control. If the external result doesn't happen, the action is viewed as a failure. In column A, finite actions rely on target numbers. When an external blocker strikes, the entire structure collapses. In column B, infinite action is based on behavioral consistency. When an external blocker strikes, the structural integrity holds firm, independent of immediate outcomes. Infinite action steps are durable. They are rooted in identity and direction. This allows them to stay relevant regardless of external market conditions or results. For example, the goal of landing 3 clients is finite and fragile. The commitment to showing up with full presence in every meeting is infinite and durable. To ensure an action step is infinite, we test it with 3 anchoring questions. First, is this action connected to something you genuinely value, or is it just a way to win a scoreboard? Second, would this action still feel meaningful if no one else noticed it? And third, what would it look like to take this same action every month for the next year? Actions that pass these tests move the client away from chasing outcomes and toward building a professional identity that can be sustained over time. The infinite game framework only functions when diagnostic insight is paired with these durable action steps. Throughout this process, the coach must remember that the client is the one who defines the rules. The coach simply provides the lens to see those rules clearly. This architecture shows the system in motion. The forward vector is propelled by data loops and consistent actions, moving through a space no longer defined by external scoreboards. This keeps power with the client, ensuring their action plan remains within their locus of control. Deploying this framework returns the focus to the client's actual locus of control. It identifies the assumptions causing their stagnation and replaces them with a functional logic for their professional growth. The final result is a shift from frantic racing to deliberate endurance. The professional is focused on the rhythm of their career, not the peak. The objective is not to help a client win a game that was never theirs. It is to help them build a professional